difficult question.
Hi, my name's Kim. I just want to say thank you first for all your open and honest testimonies about your backgrounds, which I would think that everybody here would really appreciate, and most of us, if not all of us, actually relate to in some way. My question is, how will you be actively promoting an environment in your workplace that is inclusive and celebrates diversity of all cultures and is visible to the wider community?
Excellent. Who would like to start? Time to write it down. Very important. Don't forget the question. Well, when we start where we ended with Rolf?
Okay, we can start.
Start with Rolf.
I guess, because one of the things for me is that my heritage is with me wherever I go. So whichever workplace I've been in, I think I've always found a way to integrate that into that, be it my faith, be it the cultural expectations that come from either my mother or my father. And I think in the first part, it's really easy for me to say that we can do things. I get like, food is such an easy thing. You know, how do we have a cultural food day? How do we bring people in? Everyone brings a pot, something like that. I guess your second question about how do we translate that into the broader community I guess that's my bread and butter. That's what we do as a community organisation. We go and seek out people, we promote that, we celebrate the differences that we have in our community. So a recent example being is that we just at Southside we had an exhibition of Indigenous detainees at ANC, where their artworks were on display for the last 3 weeks with an ADOC. And we promoted that to the greater community, put that out there, and we allow that, or we create those opportunities for other people. You know. Another thing that we did was we had a grandparents' day with Southside, where we had people from different ethnic backgrounds come in with their grandchildren, and this was in response to a lot of grandparents feeling that their grandchildren were disconnected from their culture. A lot of their grandchildren not speaking their language, and not writing, not following traditional dress and all these different things. So it was just a day to bring them together and celebrate what it was so great about that culture. And the end result was that the one thing we had is that the grandchildren had to walk away being able to write their name in their grandparents' native language. So it's, those are those different things that we go out there. And they sound really simple. There's a lot of background stuff that has to go into that. But they're just different ways that we can celebrate that difference.
Everyone. Okay. You want to speak first? You don't have to. Okay. Look, I just have a simple view on this. The UK was probably known to be one of the most xenophobic countries in the world. Used to be known. It is no longer. A country that survived on fish and chips today cannot do without chicken tikka. And that's a fact. The main dish today in the UK is chicken tikka. Now, what do we learn from that? It means that the 16 million people in the UK, out of them, a quarter of them are from outside the country, have learned to understand what the other person wears, what the other person eats, what the other person does in his spare time, how do they live, and what's their background. They've taken a long time doing it, but others have taken much, much longer and still haven't come anywhere close. So there is an answer. We have to learn to understand each other a lot more. And especially the 3 phases of our life. One is the Balavastha, means the childhood, when we meet friends and we play with them and learn from them. Then the other one is the Grihastha, and when we work with each other. That is the question, I think, which is vexing you at the moment. And yes, that's the best place where we can get to know each other. The worst thing that they've had in the past were those locked up closet offices. Today they have an open environment in which we work. But really speaking, we still have a very enclosed environment where we don't get to know each other as much as we should. And if we go through with the ideologies that were proposed by all the earlier thinkers of management structures, etc., and Max Weber, etc., we know that the human being is is an animal that wants to mix with others, and they work very well in teams. We work towards that. But really speaking, are we creating that environment in its truest form in a work situation? If we can do that, then we'll be much more successful. If we're going to sneer at that person's parcel for lunch and say, gosh, you've got a smelly thing today, then the person who's brought that lunch should say, here, try a bit of this. You might like it. Don't judge it by its smell. So let's exchange a lot more than the same office. Let's exchange a lot more about humanity and friendship and getting to know each other a lot more. Thank you.
Yeah, just very briefly, because I'm young and I've got a job, but it's not a full-time job, and more of what I say is what I hope I would do if that situation ever occurred. And for me, it would be, all right, I'm a member of a team at World Vision, and I'm the only brown person. And I've often wondered why, and it's forced me to think on behalf of the organisation as to why we attract people of a certain demographic and feed that back into our organisation. Why is it that we attract people from the same church, not even just Christian, but from the same Hillsong church? Why are they the same demographic? And then feed that back. If I go into a workplace and they're all white people, I'm going to ask why. And if I go into a workplace and they're all brown people, I'm going to ask why. Or I hope I have the courage to ask why.
Thanks, Kim, for your question. I almost feel like I should ask Elliot to give me a report card on this, because I do bang on about it at work. I can see you laughing over there, it's true. I actually have a confession to make to you, Kim, and that is that I had to do some work on myself in this particular area. When I first started work, I will say honestly that I tried to forget about my diverse culture, and I made it the last thing on my list. I did my very best to fit in. Perhaps one of the influencing factors of choosing to go into radio was the fact that people can't see my complicated face, and they can only hear my uncomplicated voice, and in that way I could have some relevance and engage in the theatre of the mind and be something other than what I was. So it actually took me a little while to get over that. If we want to talk about identity issues, that was a real thing I had to deal with. So my commitment to this is a very real one now in the workplace. I've come full circle on it, and I am committed to living my cultures and to value my cultures, and I'm now committed to doing the same thing with other people in my workplace. Now that includes everybody's culture, because everyone has different things to contribute. And in fact, we were just talking, the two of us, weren't we, about how somebody who isn't obviously different may still have quite a lot of diversity to contribute, whatever that may be. And we have an obligation to know about that too. We need to do it from the ground up, and it is about culture and changing the culture within the workplace. So include cultural diversity, gender diversity, disability diversity, age diversity in the workplace as part of your conversation. Make sure that you do your very best in your makeup of people in the workplace to reflect the community outside. Ideally, I'd be aiming for a workplace in which every person inside the workplace reflects the community outside. I want a workplace that looks and sounds like Australia today. And the reason why you need to do it at that very basic cultural level is because you can have as many strategies as you like about changing culture. And as you know, I'm going overseas on a Churchill Fellowship to study how they're doing it in the UK. But for all the strategy you put in place, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So you have to start from the ground up with a positive discussion culture. I have a challenge now to the migrant communities, the diverse cultural communities of Australia, and to say that we as communities need to come forward halfway to actually contribute to this. So in my industry, for example, I work in the media. It's a pretty monocultural area compared to some others. And I know that a lot of that is to do with the choices. How is it that we end up employing only a certain kind of person? Sure, we've got to do some work in the workplace about that. I would ask how many of you actually encourage your children to go into a place like the media? Or is it a family like mine where it's kind of last on the list and really I should have been a dentist, or I should have been a lawyer, or God forbid, if I couldn't be those things, I should have at least been an accountant, right? Well, yeah. The point being that we can't expect the change that we're not willing to make ourselves, all right? So we, as diverse cultural communities, have to step up. So when your child comes to you and says, I'm interested in a career in the media, I'm interested in a career in the arts, I'm interested in a career in social work, if they really want to do that, don't steer them back to being an engineer. For goodness sake, let them be a part of Diverse Australia so that they bring our stories into the broader community. Otherwise, we will keep ourselves in our own ghettos and we will be contributing to the segmentisation of Australia, which is not what we want. So let's not fall prey to the same problems.
Remember the question. What would you do to promote cultural diversity?
Well, I've never really worked, so I don't really have much to say about that, but yeah.
How to make more inclusive society? How could you make more inclusive?
When you first get a job or a career, what would you like to see in that workplace?
Just being, I don't know, I think if you're just honest about where you come from and who you are, I think that people will accept you eventually. I just think you need to be confident in who you are.
I'm taking this away because I think that's, I'm sorry, all the time we have for open public questions. If you have some questions that are burning in your mind and you'd like to get them out, you can probably just harass one of these speakers once we finish. I give you a license to do that. But we do have to move on because I'm sure some of you have to go home. But harass away on a one-on-one basis afterwards. I'd like to pass over now to Muhammad Ali, who will be telling us about the next Forum Australia discussion and dinner, which is in November.